Alright, English class. Today we're going to be talking about comparing and contrasting two characters in a story. Take 10 seconds to copy this I can statement onto the next blank page in your notebook. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Why are we doing this? Because by comparing and contrasting characters, we'll be able to have a deeper understanding of the story that we're reading, and we will have to compare and contrast in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, as well as in top high schools. This is a really important skill to have. So, what are we doing when we're comparing and contrasting? We need to find both similarities, things the characters have in common, and differences, things that they don't have in common. So what we're going to do when we compare and contrast is use a little something called a Venn diagram. Now, when we use a Venn diagram, we're going to use these sections out here on the left and the right to talk about the two different characters and write the things that make them different. Now, where the two circles overlap right here in the middle, we're going to write the things that they have in common, the similarities that make them the same. So, here's a quick example. We're going to do a quick compare and contrast for two of my fave celebs, Beyonce and Lil Wayne. Now, Beyonce is a girl, while Lil Wayne is a guy. Beyonce is very wise, while Lil Wayne is adventurous. Beyonce is a singer, but Lil Wayne is a rapper. Beyonce is a feminist, and Lil Wayne, he's more of a manly man. Beyonce is a diva, which we know is the female version of a hustler, and Lil Wayne, on the other hand, is different because he is a baller.
Baller, shot caller.
So, now that we've identified a lot of their differences, let's talk about the things that both of these artists have in common. First of all, they both have lots of swag. Second, they're both performers. That's another thing they have in common. They're also both musicians, and we all know who they are, so they're both definitely famous. Now that we've got the idea of compare and contrast in our head, Miss Holden is going to read the first two paragraphs of the Persephone story again, and while we're listening, let's really think about pulling out similarities and differences for Persephone and Hades.
Persephone grew up on Olympus, and her gay laughter rang through the brilliant halls. She was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and her mother loved her so dearly she could not bear to have her out of her sight. When Demeter sat on her golden throne, her daughter was always on her lap. When she went down to earth to look after her trees and her fields, she took Persephone. Wherever Persephone danced on her light feet, flowers sprang up. She was so lovely and full of grace that even Hades, who saw so little, noticed her and fell in love with her. He wanted her for his queen, but he knew that her mother would never consent to part with her. So he decided to carry her off. One day, as Persephone ran about in the meadow gathering flowers, she strayed away from her mother and the attending nymphs. Suddenly, the ground split open, and out of the yawning crevice came a dark chariot drawn by black horses. At the reins stood grim Hades. He seized the terrified girl, turned his horses, and plunged back into the ground. A herd of pigs rooting in the meadow tumbled into the cleft, and Persephone's cries for help died out as the ground closed again as suddenly as it had opened. Up in the field, a little swineherd stood and wept over the pigs he had lost, while Demeter rushed wildly about the meadow, looking in vain for her daughter, who had vanished without leaving a trace.
Wow, that was pretty intense. And if you're looking at your screen right now, this picture is showing exactly that. There's Hades, looking pretty creepy, stealing and kidnapping the beautiful Persephone and dragging her down underground. So, Now we need to do some similarities and differences. Look down at the Venn diagram on the sheet that you got in class today. On your left-hand side, write Persephone at the top. Now, let's talk about a few things about Persephone that are different from those of Hades. The first thing is that she is very beautiful. So I'm going to write down in my Persephone box, beautiful. Hades, on the other hand, it describes him as grim, which I'm thinking is not very beautiful. He sounds like he's a little bit scary looking. Persephone is very energetic, and she loves the outdoors, so I'm going to write those two details down on the Persephone side. But Hades, I can tell, is a bad guy. I know this because he lives in the underworld, and also, he's a kidnapper. We all know kidnappers are bad guys. Now, I can't forget to put some similarities in. Hades and Persephone might seem like very different characters, but they also have a few things in common. First of all, I know that they're both Greek gods. Also, Persephone had to come down to Earth with her mother, and Hades had to come up to Earth from the underworld in his horses. So, I know that both of them live somewhere else than Earth, and they're just visiting when they're on Earth. So those are two things they have in common. Make sure that your paper looks exactly like mine. When I write, you write.
Just like that.
Take 10 more seconds to finish copying. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to move on to some independent practice.